started because we have a packed evening this evening, so I want to make sure we get off to a great start. It is nice to see you, everyone. I am Emily Shriver from the Matriots. I am the Matriots CEO, and it is a fantastic evening tonight. We are sorry that we could not be there in person with you all up in Cleveland. We had a wonderful night planned with Botanical Gardens, but Mr. COVID told us he had other plans. So we're going to join you here from the Zoomosphere, and we will hopefully be in person sometime in the near future. So thank you so much for being flexible, for being adaptable, for being who we all are in this time of COVID. I'm going to ask you a couple of Zoom hygiene requests, please, if you don't mind putting yourself on mute when someone else is speaking. That would be excellent. If you have questions for us or you want to talk to us, go ahead and pop a comment down in the chat. We're going to be monitoring the chat as we go along. If you hear something that you love, make sure that you use your reaction buttons. You can tell me that you love it. You can tell me that you're celebrating. Make sure that you engage with us so we can see that you're here, that you're excited, that you're part of the party. You're also welcome to drop into the chat some emojis. Those tell us how you're feeling as well. If we see any thumbs down, we'll try to switch the direction of the conversation. But generally, we are just here to be together and to celebrate the last 4 years together. This evening, we have a packed evening, as I talked about. We are going to hear, we're going to first start with something that we haven't been able to do in quite some time. We're going to do some networking. We're going to break out into breakout rooms, have some questions go around, with each of you being able to give your input and have a moment of fellowship, trying to, again, recreate that space that we hoped we would have had up in Cleveland, but here in the Zoomosphere. So you'll be zoomed off to a breakout room where you'll get to have some conversation with each other, and then we'll all come back together again for our presentations of the evening. I cannot tell you how excited I am to hear our speakers this evening. I'm going to take the reins as being the mistress of ceremonies for the evening, but then we're going to hear from Representative Juanita Brent. She's here with us this evening. You're going to get to hear about her perspectives on her election, the Matriots support, and what's been happening down at the State House for her. I'll introduce you to two of our fantastic members, Pam Mason and Betsy Figge, and we'll talk a little bit about what membership has looked like up in Cleveland and Northeast Ohio generally over the last 4 years. And then we will move to hearing from two of our candidates from the Cleveland City Council race. We'll hear from Stephanie Howes and Kate Warren, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them as we come up on their parts of the presentation. I want you to know that this one thing that we're doing this evening is celebrating the last 4 years. As you know, as many of you know, we started on this journey in 2017 with 6 women who went to the Women's March in Washington, D.C. They came back from that march and decided to found the Matriots. And it took off from there. Just from those 6 members alone, we ended the year of 2017 with 355 members. And then by 2018, we had our first endorsement class. And in that endorsement class, we endorsed 35 candidates. And we had 16 successful races out of those 34 candidates. And by that time, we had almost doubled our membership by the end of the year to 688 members. In 2019, we had 1,224 members across the state of Ohio, and we endorsed 74 candidates, and I have my little card here to show you the 74 candidates that we endorsed in 2019. And so it was a nice flip out slate card. We mailed it to everyone, but by 2019, by 2020, we decided, you know what, we should probably endorse even earlier, think about primary races. So we did that, and we mailed out a primary slate card. And by the end of 2020, we had 1,665 members across 46 counties in the state of Ohio, and we had 68 endorsed candidates. And I love that I have all these slate cards here for you all to see across the time. By 2021, which was last year, and my entry to the Matriots, we endorsed this booklet. I'm going to have to just go through all the pages. All these ladies, 139 candidates were endorsed last year. That means 139 touches across the communities across Ohio, and many candidates up in Northeast Ohio. And so without your support, without all that we do here at the Matriots, we would not be able to invest in these candidates' races and hopefully help tip the scales to help them win elections. We are so thankful for your support. We are always thankful for your support. You'll see along the way in the chat a way to be sure that you engage with the Matriots and continue that support with us. But I want to make sure we get a chance to go into our breakout rooms, congregate with each other, enjoy each other's presence, and then come back together again to hear from our wonderful speakers this evening. So thank you for being here. Get ready to Zoom off, but also be ready to come back in, because we're gonna come back in and be really really thoughtful about our schedule to keep you all on time. It is nice to see you. We'll be back together in a minute. Can we go off to our rooms? I say this a lot, I think. Why is it that when we're communing together and being together, the time goes so quickly, and when I am exercising, the time goes so slowly? I don't understand the way that time works, but that was so much fun to get to hear about the Ohio you think we can be, and what the Matriots, how the Matriots have impacted you, or what you have done with regard to the Matriots. Thank you so much for sharing during our networking time. I hope that made your heart as full as it made my heart today. I'm going to, the first person that we're going to hear from, I'm going to pin myself so you can see me here. The first person that we're going to get to hear from today, I am so thankful that Rep. Brent is here with us today from the 12th District. I have spent some time with Juanita, and I am so excited that you all get to have the moment to spend some time with her as well. The Matriots, she was last elected in 2020. She also ran in 2018, and we have endorsed her before. She represents, as I mentioned, the current 12th District at the Ohio House. And I wrote down some notes about where exactly that is for you all in Northeast Ohio. We've got Mayfield Heights kind of on the north side, Pepper Pike towards the east side, down towards Bedford and Oakwood, and then kind of west out to just about Garfield Heights. So, sort of a rectangular section in Northeast Ohio. And she has been a fantastic advocate for women's rights, for childcare, for infant mortality, speaking out about racial wealth gaps, economic empowerment for women. And so I think, one of my favorite things about Rep. Brent is what a great communicator she is. So I'm going to give the time and space to her and not take up any more of the air. Rep. Brent, are you there? Can you come off mute?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much. I was kind of blushing like, man, who is she talking about? But thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I'm blushing behind all of that. And that's what it's really about. Being a person who grew up going to all girls schools, I understand the importance of women being seen, and the matriarchs, they make sure that people like me feel seen in this place called politics. And just like it was said before, I was endorsed by the matriarchs in 2020, but a lot of times that's the difference between the matriarchs and every other place where I've received endorsement. The support didn't just stop with the endorsement. The support didn't stop with just the monetary donation. The support didn't stop when my election, when I won. The support continued on every time I introduced a bill, no matter if it was House Bill 60, and I had matriarchs members reach out to me regarding making sure that people who have autistic children had access to medical cannabis, or having me come speak at different occasions, no matter if it's talking about racism as a public health crisis. It's been so many times where the matriarchs have brought me back to be able to educate other members. So this is not just a, one and done. This is a continual relationships. When I even think about bees, we have to just think about the basicness of bees. Bees are always in a group. You never see a bee by itself. You always see, if you see one bee, just know that it's going to be a bunch of them. And if you mess with a bee, they're going to attack. And so that's how it is with the matriarchs. If somebody has tried to mess with me, try to do something to me, I know there are the other matriarchs who are going to come in, who are going to say something, who are going to stick up for me. And being in this place of being elected, that probably means more than what anybody can ever express, because sometimes it can be very lonely in these places. You might not see people that even look like you, that have had the same background as you. And to have that continuous support has been so vital, even while still serving in office. I tell you, one of the best experiences of being endorsed by the matriarchs was the unexpected amounts of mailers that went out in my district, and the random people who were connected to the matriarchs who received a mailer from me, or my neighbor who received a mailer from me for the matriarchs, and I didn't even know they were being sent out on my behalf. And it's those little small moments that just lets me know that there are a group of women who have my back. I mean, that's just, it's just a sisterhood of people that you never would even ask for. And a lot of times people only get that from their family, or if you're lucky enough to join a sorority. But the matriarchs is a group of sisterhoods that if you mess with one, you're going to have a couple hundreds of women behind you doing the same thing too. So I've been so grateful for that experience. And I don't never want to take lightly. The money does help a lot. When we just look at how campaign finance is and we look at how people are raising money, women are not raising money to the same extent that most men candidates are. So to not only just have that physical support and emotional support, the money does help because we do need money to run races. When I look at what my year has been like as a candidate for the Matriarchs, that has definitely been one of the things that is always a point of conversation with any woman who's centering running for office is how am I going to raise the money? Who am I going to be connected to? How am I going to be connected with resources? And the resources that you receive is not even just during the election season, but year round. No matter if it's somebody inviting you out, let me introduce you to some other people who can pour into you as a candidate. Let me introduce you to some more people that can help you get your legislation passed because I'm connected to so-and-so that's on the other side of the aisle. The connections are endless. So for people, I feel like I might be speaking to the choir right now, but the benefits that come from being part of the Matrix of things that I feel like I was giving some, but what I've received in return has been so much more than ever I would ever thought within itself. I always go back to the whole concept of bees as a whole. They're being organized. They can be aggressive if they're poked. And, bees normally have this one queen bee. But the thing about the Matrix, I think we have a lot of queen bees. I think we're all our own queen bees who've decided to come together to be this organization. And so we keep on producing more and more. So as I say, for my introduction of the Matriarchs, it was Monica Moreski. I was running for state rep for the first time and she was telling me about it. And she's like, Juanita, you need to apply for the Matriarchs. And she said that like 2 different times and, not listening, I didn't apply. And then the second time around, she's like, Juanita, I'm serious. You need to make sure you apply. And I did. But I think for somebody like that, for just pouring into me and encouraging me to have this, to be introduced to this type of organization. And we all have our own stories of that person who introduced us to the Matriarchs because they saw the queen bee in us that needed to be connected to this overall organization. So what is going on right now, even though this might be the 4-year anniversary of it, this Matriarchs has really just changed the trajectory of the state of Ohio. So many more women who have been elected to school board, city council, county council, state house, hopefully governor and lieutenant governor for the state of Ohio, because I know anytime you have the Matriarchs behind you, you have the necessary ingredients you need to have a winning team. So I won't be holding, but please, keep on supporting this organization, all these things that is going on here at the State House, no matter if it's House Bill 60, which helps increases the for medical cannabis to be used for autism spectrum. It was with the help of multiple Matriarchs people who sent in information to the health committee. Shout out to the Matriarchs who sent letters into the health committee to help me get that bill that just passed out of the health committee that is headed to the floor of the Ohio House. There's been so many times. And so this group is so necessary. So until we get to the place where it is 50-50 when it comes to the amount of men and women that are in office, we still have a lot of work to do. But I know with the Matriarchs, that is so going to happen in more of the near future of all of our lifetime and not our children's lifetime. So thank you so much. My name is Juanita Brent. I just happen to be a state rep for House District 12.
Thank you so much, Juanita. That was wonderful. That not only is it uplifting to hear the work that you're doing and to see what's happening because of you in Central Ohio that affects the state of Ohio, it is just to hear you talk about the network that's been created by the Matriots. That is part of what we rely on so much internally, but also as candidates. And in my last the little networking moment that I had, there were numerous candidates and former candidates and electeds in that session alone. And so just watching the connections that we make through the Matriots, I just so appreciate your candor and your thoughtful comments this evening. The next session that the next part that we want to talk about is focusing on our members as well. So we have been gifted with 1,906 members, not that anyone is counting, across the state of Ohio. And as you saw in our networking moment, those members have been engaged in numerous ways throughout the organization. We have multiple committees. Our members help review research on our candidates who apply. They help interview candidates. They help with our finance committee, making sure that we've got our I's dotted and our T's crossed. They help reach out across the organization, creating hives for new members. And inviting individuals to come and join us here at the Matriots. And they assist on hundreds of other ways. Whenever I need anything, I just pick up a phone and a Matriots member is there to answer. And it doesn't have to necessarily be advice that is on Matriots Matters. So I hope that you all are able to connect with each other and enjoy each other. This evening, we have 2 member spotlights that we wanted to make sure that we bring to you, and two of our wonderful members and volunteers who are willing to be spokeswomen for the Matriots and talk a little bit about their experience. The first is Pam Gray Mason. She's going to be telling us a little bit about what it looks like on the membership committee. And if I can say anyone who is out there in her community, talking with our members, engaging with other women across the state, it is Pam. She is a networker's networker, and has it. On my very first trip to Cleveland, she brought me a basket full of goodies that included a suffragette and she is Cleveland shirt and just all kinds of Cleveland wine, which I didn't know existed. And so ready and willing to network with even the newbie in town. And Betsy Figge is our other member who's going to be spotlighted this evening. She's a member of our endorsement committee, but has been with us since 2018, almost since the beginning. And she was a member of our membership committee. She's hosted house parties for us. She's brought in other members. And now she's a member of our endorsement committee, thinking about who ultimately we should endorse, who matches our values, because nobody understands our values like Betsy. So I want to give the floor over to Abby Manley, who is our Director of Membership and Development. And she's going to help lead a conversation between Betsy and Pam.
Thank you so much. So Betsy and Pam, thank you both so much for taking the time to speak with us today. And so Betsy, we'll start with you. And so we have a couple of different questions and we'll just go back and forth. So Betsy, of all the organizations that you could have gotten involved with, why the Matriots?
So it's interesting, I get asked to be on boards all the time, especially with my work doing development finance, primarily for nonprofit organizations. But when I think about where I want to spend my free time after work, with my family, factoring everything else in, it really has to resonate with me. And it really has to feel like I'm making a difference for the greater good. And the perspective that I bring to the Matriots is, it's not for me, but I'm a single mom and I have a 14-year-old, almost 15-year-old daughter. And so what I do for the Matriots, I'm really doing for her generation. And it's interesting having kids that you hear them echoing back, parroting back in their daily lives, what they hear us as parents say. And so when I hear my daughter, who is 14, say, vote your values and do it with conviction, I'm like, wow, like that's totally worth it, because I think her generation is fearless and unapologetic, and they are going to make a difference, for the rest of the world. So what we're doing is just forging the way for that next generation. But what I really like is being on the endorsement committee to make sure that the candidates understand that while it may feel very lonely, knocking on doors or answering emails or fighting the good fight, that you have over 1,000 people behind you that you don't see, but 1,000 people behind you rooting for you every day. And so when we get to interview people as part of the endorsement committee, I love trying to make them feel comfortable, to get them talking, to really help understand what drives them. And once they start opening up, there is no stopping them. And so it's really invigorating to do that. And I don't get that feeling being on any other board. And so it's really my privilege and my honor to be a part of the Matriots and to serve on the endorsement committee.
Well, we are so lucky to have you and everything that you give to us, Betsy. Like, make no mistake about it.
My pleasure.
But I love your answer. I love that. That's so wonderful. Pam?
Well, good evening, ladies. I'm excited to be here, a little nervous, only for the love of Emily, because she tells me all the time, you make me smile. I am retired, but I have actually belonged to a lot of organizations. I have to say I was introduced to the Matriots by Jan Bitterman, who just walked up to me and Pat Frost. He was on membership and said, "You belong with us." And just her whole aura, her whole demeanor just sold me on it. Once I sign up for an organization, I want to be involved. Because you guys started in Central Ohio, I wanted to reach out to Northeast Ohio because I know some awesome women here in the Cleveland and surrounding area, one of them being Rep Brent. I call her my daughter. As I began to work on membership, it was very important to me that we, in fact, bring women of color into the Matriots. So that was my first extension, to tell people about the Matriots, to have house parties, to build that hive. And I want to say I've been quite successful with it. The other thing is, it's in my DNA to win. If you ask me to assist you or whatever, we come to win. We run our race, we do whatever we need to do. But in fact, it's no messing around with all of this. We come to win. And most of the ladies will tell you, whatever it takes. And as the mission statement says for the Matriots, when women lead, Ohio prospers. So I'm very grateful to be part of this group. I'm very grateful to pass that legacy and the torch on to younger women, because we have to stay, even though I don't have it, well, I have lots of daughters, play daughters, but even though I don't have a daughter, it's important to me as a woman to make right on where we are today. Thank you.
That's wonderful. And it sounds like we owe Jan another thank you note for walking up to you and introducing you to us.
She's wonderful. She's absolutely wonderful.
You are a huge asset to the organization, and we're so lucky to have you. So next thing I want to talk about is looking over the last 4 years of the Matriots, what is something that sticks out? And if you have a specific example, that's great. But if not, no worries, that you're most proud of. So Betsy, let's start with you.
So I would have to say it's the camaraderie and the teamwork on the endorsement committee. And I joke that the endorsement committee is the best committee, but it's true. I'm not going to apologize for it, but it's so fun. Yay. It's so fun having these women that with me, like, we have each other's backs, which is really nice. And, nobody is afraid to take the lead on endorsement interviews, and you can always rely on, people doing their research and really digging in and asking the tough questions. And if you're taking the lead on interviewing somebody, there's always somebody that is willing to dig deeper. And so it's a very healthy, it's a very energizing working relationship with some people, some of which I've never met in person because of COVID, but it's just a great feeling. And I think it comes through to the candidates as well, is that we are a united front and we've come to win. And we want to make sure that the people that we put our endorsement behind, have that same passion and energy and resiliency. And so I would have to say it's the endorsement team in Northeast Ohio.
I love that. I feel like something that's so amazing about the Matriots is that the committees do a lot of work. They actually work. It's not just a name on letterhead, which is it's so huge. And it's the only way that we are able to propel our mission forward. So we just thank you for all of your work on the endorsement committee.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Pam, what about you?
Well, I want to say it's the membership committee. We work, we got great people on the committee. I want to say sisterhood is very, very important. As we talk about how to gain members, how to retain members, but more importantly, we had to talk about affordability. Under Shiloh, who has now, just a wonderful, wonderful leader, we were able to redevelop the website. And again, it comes down to affordability. There are people that are able to just give a lump sum or whatever, but even for myself being retired, we worked out a plan. There is a payment plan, and particularly during pandemic, I know for myself, a lot of the members, they were suffering or whatever. You can always go to a payment plan, which I'm on a monthly payment plan because I want to give my share or whatever. So we worked that out for our members. I understand that quite a few people are on membership, but it's affordability. You know, it's one thing to say, oh, well, I support you, but everybody is aware that finances are important when you're running a race. You know, manna just doesn't drop out the sky. They, you know. When I first got introduced to the organization, I heard a wonderful, wonderful story from one of the state reps. She was one of the first endorsed candidates, Monique Smith. And I remember her telling us at one of the parties or whatever, that she was in the race, she was looking like she was going to win the race, but she opened up her checkbook, her campaign checkbook, and she was down to 3 or 4 cents. And she had not bought her yard signs. And she reached out to the Matriots and they bought her yard signs. I thought that was very, very generous. And she won. We come to win, as they say. I think it was a great story.
We love those stories. That's amazing. I love that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have one more question and we're getting tight on time. But want to give you guys the opportunity because this one I think is a big one. So if there's one thing that you could change for women running for office in Ohio, what would it be? And so Betsy, we'll go to you first.
I think, and I apologize for my dog barking in the background.
You're fine.
I think what I would change is I would want to eliminate any fear that any candidate has that they're not ready, that they are not good enough, or that they don't have enough experience, because we all do. And so I would eliminate that misconception across the state.
I love that. That's amazing. Pam?
I would, and I often speak to prospective candidates. I think it is, and I always say this, run your race. And as Betsy said, there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of negativity attached to all of, a woman particularly running in an election. When you come out with the confidence, such as your Juanita Brent or Stephanie House or Cheryl Stevens, I know all of them, you just run your race. I mean, it sounds simple, but a lot of people, they go off on a tangent or whatever. It should be breathing it, and and then if you're part of the matrix, you actually can look left or right and get that support that you need to bring yourself up and continue to run your race.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Pam. And thank you, Betsy. Appreciate you both taking the time to speak with us. Our members mean so much to us and really is the lifeblood of this organization. So thank you both so much. So I'm going to pass it back to Emily now.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Betsy and Pam. That was excellent. It is always good to hear your voices, whether it's here in the Zoomosphere or out there in the world, meeting up with members or interviewing candidates. I've had the joy and the opportunity in the last 6 months to get to be with both of you in those spaces. And we really appreciate you giving your voice this evening to our conversation. I want to make sure that I also highlight for everyone, while we were out in our networking groups, we had other members who were also helping guide the conversation within your networking little pods, maybe hives. Do I call them hives? What happens inside of a hive, even smaller, a comb, maybe inside your combs. We had Bailey Foll, we had Rachel Escuza, we had Pat Frost Brooks, we had Barbara Fillion, and Abby Manley was also womaning one of the combs inside our hive for our networking purposes. So thank you for being nimble, excited, there for us and there for the membership of the organization to have a moment of networking and communing. It is my extreme honor to get to introduce two of our endorsed candidates from 2021 for a conversation with them. I want to make sure that both are still here. I think so. I'm first going to introduce Kate Warren. Kate Warren ran a fantastic race for Cleveland City Council in Ward 13. She has been working on women's issues since she stepped foot out of college. She has been working with women's shelters. She's been working to help individuals in job security and homelessness and housing insecurity and childcare and mental health, all things that the Matriots are trying to help address through our 5 values. And her love of community is something that stood out to us and through her interview process. And even since that time, she has been passionately raising her own voice and the voices of others. One thing that I admire deeply about Kate is her ability to not just say what she has to say, but to also reflect the community through the use of her voice and privilege. So I'm so honored that Kate is here with us this evening. I also have our 2-time endorsed candidate, Stephanie Howes, with us tonight. Stephanie is one of the newest members of Cleveland City Council as well. She's rocking a hairdo I used to have, which is great to see this evening. She was a representative for Ohio House District 11 and now recently has taken over as one of the 5 councilwomen out of 17 on Cleveland City Council. We got some work to do in Cleveland. Do I hear it here? And she has been a vocal supporter of the Matriots, and I'm not going to steal her stories from her, but some of them are my favorite about how the Matriots support not just in the general election, but also in the primary has helped her and others along the way. So I feel very honored to be with you both. I want to give you just a minute to say hello before I move to questions, if you would like the platform for a second.
Okay,
Councilwoman Howes.
Good evening, everybody. Looking forward to the conversation. Thank you for extending the invitation.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you. That was such a nice introduction, Emily. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It's nice to see you both. Well, I have a list of questions, so I'm gonna, just like Abby, I'm gonna go through my list of questions. You take this where we're gonna take it. But my first question to you both, and we'll go in alphabetical order. So we'll go Stephanie for alphabetical of last name. We'll go Stephanie first, then we'll go Kate for this one. How did the endorsement from the Matriots have an impact, if it did at all, on your race?
So good evening again to everyone. When I think about the impact of the Matriots endorsement, for me, it was literally, I always tell people, it was the first check in the mail that I got, and I had to make a decision. I had to I made, again, when you don't have any money, you strategically figure out, and I felt like I need to get a billboard because it was strategically, it was a place where I knew I needed to get my name ID up. And so billboards are very expensive. And that check that came through, I mean, it covered over 50% of the billboard, and I was able to scramble some other nuts together to get a hold and have a billboard run through the primary for me. And like I said, it was a huge lift for me because it was just a huge visibility, increased my name ID, and helped me to successfully get over and through the primary. And then I will also say, with the endorsement, local campaigns are powered through people, and just the people resource that the Matriots extended to me and my campaign was greatly appreciated. Door knocking is probably people's most least favorite thing to do, and to have women who, were just very unafraid to come and walk with me and walk on behalf of my campaign to connect with voters. I'm very appreciative of that. So, I mean, that's what an endorsement did for me and my campaign. And I know it lent to me being successful. So thank you.
Yeah, I echo so much of what Councilwoman House said. I think for me as a woman and as a first-time candidate last year, I think there's sort of this feeling of vulnerability when you decide to step out there and decide to run your race, and you don't know what's going to come back from that. And so the Matriots was one of my first endorsements that I received, and it was like sort of like that jolt of validation that like, oh, this is happening. Like, we're doing this, we're running this race, and there are all these women behind me. And I think I forget who it was who said it in the previous segment about women doubting ourselves and doubting that maybe we don't have the right experience or something like that. And the reality is that so many men run for office without ever questioning themselves. And so to have an organization like Matriots backing me sort of validated that, like, yes, I have the right skills and experiences to be in this race. I have something to offer this race. And it did that at sort of an early time that was really helpful. And the other thing that I wanted to raise is recognition. I think even in the past 5 years, we've seen an increased recognition that we need more women in elected office. And in the last city council race 4 years ago, I don't remember much conversation about it, but when I decided to throw my hat in the ring to run for city council, there were only 2 women on Cleveland City Council at that time. And then after that, two more were appointed. And now there are 5 elected to city council. But there was a Cleveland.com article shortly before the election about all of the women that were in the race. And I believe Matriots was quoted in that article. And I think the way that organizations like Matriots raise the profile of how important it is to elect women, that impacts people and how they're thinking as they're making their decision about who to vote for. So that was really powerful as well.
I think it has been a wonderful opportunity to rally around women and lift up our voices collectively. I will also say that I'm a big fan of road trips. And so on one of my road trips up to Cleveland, we did a sightseeing trip where I got to see that billboard, Councilwoman House, and I got to stand by it, take my picture, and so I see in the chat, maybe we need to invest in a few strategically located billboards. I love the suggestions, keep popping them in the chat. Bailey's got some snappy fingers going as well. So thank you for making a stop on the Matriots tour around the state. I'm interested, Kate, from your perspective, what would be your advice for a candidate running for the first time? What is something that you would put out there we have numerous candidates on the phone, on the call today. What would be some advice you'd give to them?
My number one advice is to start knocking doors yesterday, start right now. I think sometimes, especially as women, it can feel intimidating to go door knocking, and we can sort of want to have all of our ducks in a row before we start doing that. But the reality is, like, the more time that you can spend talking to people in your community about the issues that matter to them, the better. And door knocking is so effective and so important, especially in these local races. So even if you don't feel like you have your whole, campaign straight or whatever, like, get out there and talk to your neighbors about that you're running, and ask them questions about what they see that the needs are in the community, and get really comfortable with spending all of your waking hours knocking doors.
There are a lot of interesting conversations to be had out there when you're knocking on doors, and you get some good recipes. I mean, you don't know, there's a lot that's happening. Stephanie, can you, Mary Lightbody, Rep Lightbody, in the comments here, gave us a little bit of a comment on imposter syndrome. Can you address for us a little bit about if you've experienced imposter syndrome and how one might combat against that as a candidate?
Yeah, so no, I will say I have like come to the age, I just am who I am, as a candidate, and I will say not an imposter. I will say like the first time that I ran for the state house, people, because again, if anyone knows me, I like wear my hair differently. I like have embraced my natural hair. And someone was like, you can't have your hair natural, you need to straighten it, and such and such. And so I did that for that year when I was running for the state house. And so anyone see my picture, my hair is straightened, it's long, and all that type of stuff. But then like after that first year, I was like, they just don't have to accept me as I am, and I just went back to like being just who I am. And it's like, I need you to get over, what I'm looking like. I mean, I do think there are some fundamental things that you have to do because you got to understand the reality of the dynamics that we are in this very unfortunately patriarchal society. But how do you overcome that? Again, and I don't want to offend anyone, but there was a quote that said, carry the confidence of a mediocre white man. And I, when I see it, I just laugh because as Kate was talking about how, we feel like women always feel like we got to have everything together. And it's not even the fact that men just run regardless of their credentials, they're actually winning. And so right now we have those same people that don't have experience and they are leading and making real decisions for real people, overseeing millions and billions of dollars. So if you have that confidence, honey, you can conquer the world. Many women have beyond the confidence. You have had a lived experience that says you know how to get done. If you are a parent, if you are a wife, if you are a caregiver, if you can hold a job, and navigate it in life, trust me, you have some wins that are shared experiences with people. And so that experience should be your confidence. But if all else fails, put your head up and just go do it.
That brought me so much joy. I'm glad I was on mute. And I'm going to follow up with a question for you, to Stephanie. What can we do during the off years to be supportive? I've been thinking a lot about this. We as the Matriots, we get out there during the election year. We're really supportive of our candidates by trying to invest early in our candidates. But as a gift to our members, what kinds of things can we be doing during these off years to be supportive of our women who are elected officials?
Yeah, I think one of the things that this network of women can do is to help your elected candidates begin to really think through building that consistent network they will need to sustain them. So, as the saying goes, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And unfortunately, we hear so many times how we never hear from people until it's time for election. And even having, that group think to have a touch point, with elected women and checking in, whether it's 3 months or 6 months, once they have gotten elected, to say, hey, how's it going? How are you staying engaged with people? What do you need? Hey, why don't we plan to do a summer door-to-door campaign? It's those types of things of like activities where you can engage with people where you're not asking for something that really have the long lasting staying power that can really carry women over and through when it comes up for re-election. Or again, to position, candidates who may have come up short, or, God just say it wasn't your time right now, to help put you in a position where, you're demonstrating to people you want to stay in contact with them, regardless if you have a title or not, regardless if you are running for a lecture or on the ballot or not.
I'm going to turn the same question to you, Kate. In these off years, what are you thinking about? What can you see being supportive by our membership?
Yeah, well, I want to build off of something that Stephanie said, which is that, which both Stephanie and Rep. Brent have said to me personally. I was not victorious in my race, but as I've run into them around town, they're like, keep showing up. And I think that is an important piece of this, that we need to be normalizing for women that you can see yourself in these offices, and it takes time for women, I think, especially, to come around to the idea that they might need to run. So I think about ways that you can just encourage women in your life. If you're someone who, you know, reads the news and watches what your elected officials are doing and goes, what are they thinking? I think I could do that better. Then, like, encourage those people in your life to think about running for office. And when they say no, because, you know, it's too hectic, or no, because I'm scared to put myself out there, or I don't want the criticism, or whatever, I think it's our job as women to speak into that and say, yeah, but your voice is important, and you know, we want to be able to hear from you. So I think whatever we can do to build up women, to get them to consider this, is a really important piece, and happens all the time, and needs to happen a long time before the campaign starts.
We're thinking a lot about what barriers exist for women in entering the political field and their understanding of the political field, let alone what they need when they decide to actually raise their hand and run. And there's a whole spectrum of ways in which we can be supportive of breaking down that mental barrier or the physical barriers that exist for women to get elected to office. I'm interested from both of you as to what you see are the big things coming up in Northeast Ohio. You know, I'm down here in Columbus. I keep my eye on what's happening in Cleveland and the surrounding areas, but I'm interested from your perspective, what do you see is coming down the pike for Northeast Ohio being influential?
Well, you know, I think that Cleveland is in a really critical moment, and it's sort of a big transition time for Cleveland. You know, we have a new mayor in Cleveland, but we also, there's just a lot of leadership shifts happening, with people retiring and new people coming into leadership roles. And I sort of think, you know, that's exciting, and it also could be a little bit destabilizing in our community. And so I think what I try to ground myself in, and what I hope we can ground ourselves in our community, is just continuing to make sure that we look to data and evidence about what works in our communities and putting it into practice, and not being scared of trying something new, but, you know, still being really thoughtful and collaborative about how we're moving forward as a community. Because I just think in a time of transition, we just have to be thoughtful about what the next steps are. And I think, you know, it's exciting because all of this transition sort of gives us the opportunity to ask, why are we doing things the way that we're doing them? And is that what best serves the people in our community? And I look forward to leaders that are asking those kinds of questions.
Mm-hmm. Councilwoman House?
So when I think about you know, I guess what's next, what's on the horizon here in East Ohio, you know, I do believe the way Cleveland goes, you know, can help, you know, set the foundation not only for Northeast Ohio, but for this state. And with that, it is going to be really important for us with these leadership changes, not only in the government sector, you know, there's some things happening in the private sector and nonprofit sector where there's an opportunity to create an alignment and a true partnership and cooperation with amongst one another to be able to strategically invest in ways that can truly be transformational, and to have more of our residents begin to truly see things on the up climb that meets their individual lives, right? That hits their doorsteps. That's what's on the horizon. That's the opportunity that we have in front of us with the significant investments that are coming down from the federal government in various forms: CARES Acts, ARPA, infrastructure, hopefully Build Back Better. You know, we're having just a significant amount of resources that will be at our disposal for the government. And then there are voices in the room now that are really pushing and challenging even many of our financial institutions to systematically do things differently, to come up, redesign rules so that more people will have an opportunity to live great lives here in Northeast Ohio. And that's what I'm excited for. I'm looking forward, and I am hopeful that we are going to seize the moment and not waste it, in 20 years from now, shake our heads with regrets.
I think it resonates across the state with, we have a lot to do. We have a lot to do. And I'm just so thankful that the both of you are working towards a better Northeast Ohio, towards a better Cleveland, towards a better Ohio generally. And for that, the Matriots are thankful. And I personally am very thankful. I had one follow-up question. I had one last question here, but I kind of want to do a little bit of we'll just see how I do with a lightning round here. But the question was, so answer it maybe in one sentence or less. What is one thing you wish you'd known before you ran for office that you know now?
I'm never going to have enough money or time to get everything done. So work really, really hard.
I was going to say the biggest surprise to me was how much work it is applying for all the endorsements. Like that in itself is sort of a full-time job. So if you're running, get ready.
What was the biggest challenge? It could be the same thing, but what was the biggest challenge?
I think
my biggest challenge was getting people to hit the doors. Like, you think you were going to do this volunteer thing, but I really made a conscious decision then. And I actually got invested in a paid canvas. And that was probably the biggest thing I did. It was a switch from the primary to the general election. That was probably the biggest, it was my biggest challenge, but I feel like it paid off when we pivoted our campaign strategy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think my biggest challenge was trying to learn how not to take criticism personally. Like, I think you just have some days or some weeks where you get a lot of hard feedback or you hear what your opponent is saying about you or whatever, and learning not to internalize that. And I think it was Pamela who was saying, like, you just have to run your race. There are so many distractions, but you have to stay positive when you're running the race. And so figuring out how to tune out the noise, I think, is a big challenge.
And then last lightning round question, you have just a few $100s left in your bank account. Do you do yard signs or mailers? What do you do? Or is it something else? Yard signs, mailers, something else?
If last things, I would do mailers.
Mailers.
That's funny. I was going to say yard signs.
Yeah, I would do mailers. I would say not just mailers, I would chase the ballot, because we are in an early voting system. And again, you want to be able to depend yard signs or whoever, but with a mail budget, it is very strategic. You know who's voting, and at least you can get in front of exactly that one time when they're about to vote. So it would be mailing.
I was like 3 weeks out from the election and I was running out of yard signs, and like yard signs are more expensive. They're cheaper the more you buy, but it's like this math game at the end of trying to figure out how many to buy or whatever. I wish I would have had $300 more for yard signs.
It's like I don't know if you play the game Oodle, which is like Wordle, but for math and logic. It's like the Oodle game. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today, for your insights, for your grace and your joy in the conversation, but also for serving your community in the ways that you do. So we are thankful for you here at the Matriots, and we really appreciate your time this evening. I am going to, let's see here. If you don't mind removing the pins for me, Heather, just do a little quick wrap up here for you all. Thank you everyone for coming. A couple of different things that I want to make sure that I mention before we go. The first one is Thank you so much to my staff and our independent contractors and our volunteers who are here today. One special shout out to Bridget Anthony, whose very last day it is today. She joined here on her last day and her last hour at her last moment of the Matriots to hear the words of our endorsed candidates and of our members, and so for which we are incredibly thankful, as well as her work. You've seen her work as the voice of the Matriots out there on social media for the last couple of years. And in other ways. And so thank you so much, Bridget, for joining us this evening, and all of you. I will also mention that our endorsement application is open. Right now, our application for endorsement is open. We need you to push that out to your communities. We are here to endorse women who share our values and to get women elected who will help this state thrive and prosper. And so please send this application to your networks. We want to make sure that we get our women endorsed and that we get them the money that they need early on in their races to be successful. And finally, I just want to thank you all for coming. Thank you, members. Thank you, candidates. Thank you, public, general folks, for coming and enjoying the evening. If you liked what you saw, please join the Matriots. Consider giving to the work that we're doing across the state. We are so incredible. When I say this a lot, but I'm so incredibly grateful and thankful for each and every one of you. And seeing your squares here has brought this week just so much joy. And so I hope that you have a wonderful week. You stay warm out there, and you keep paying attention to what the Matriots are doing. We've got a lot going on. Thank you so much, you all, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, Mary. Bye. Hey, Emily. Bye. Hey, Cassandra. Hello, Lieutenant Governor Cheryl.
Bye, Mary. Bye, Michelle. Good night.
Good night.
And let's stop recording.